Dr. Zephyrian Kelthara had seen countless species walk through the doors of the Galactic Medical Center on station Kepler 442. His 4 arms moved with practiced precision as he calibrated the bioscanner, preparing for another routine examination. The Zelanti physician had spent the last 15 cycles treating everything from crystalline hive minds with fractured consciousness to gaseous nebula-born entities suffering from dimensional displacement syndrome. Nothing surprised him anymore. Or so he thought. The human who entered his medical bay looked remarkably ordinary. Average height by galactic standards, bipedal, carbon-based, with the typical mammalian features he had read about in the sparse medical literature available on their species. The being called itself Marcus Chen, and according to the preliminary files, it was here for a standard physical examination required for deep space mining certification. "Please take a seat on the examination platform," Dr. Kelthara said through his translation device, his mandibles clicking softly as he spoke. The human complied without hesitation, sitting with a relaxed posture that seemed almost casual. As the bioscanner hummed to life, Dr. Kelthara began his routine questions. "Any previous medical conditions I should be aware of?" "Broke my arm when I was 12. Had my appendix removed at 25. "Nothing major," Marcus replied, his voice carrying an easy confidence that made the doctor's secondary eyes twitch with curiosity. The first readings appeared on Dr. Kelthara's screen, and his primary eyes widened in disbelief. He ran the scan again, certain the equipment was malfunctioning. The numbers couldn't possibly be correct. "Is everything all right, Doc?" Marcus asked, noticing the physician's sudden stillness. "Yes, of course. Just calibrating the equipment," Dr. Kelthara lied smoothly. His mind raced as he processed the impossible data streaming across his monitors. The human's bone density was nearly 3 times that of most spacefaring species. His muscle fiber composition showed a tensile strength that should have been mechanically impossible for an organic being. Most disturbing of all, the cardiovascular system readings indicated that this creature's heart was designed to pump blood through a body experiencing gravitational forces that would crush most civilized beings. Dr. Kelthara's tertiary hands moved across his datapad, accessing the broader medical database. Surely there had to be more information about human physiology. What he found instead was a frustrating collection of incomplete files, classified sections, and cryptic references to something called the Terran Adaptation Protocol. "How's the gravity here compared to your homeworld?" the doctor asked, trying to keep his voice casual. Marcus shrugged. "Little light, actually. Takes some getting used to. Back home, we're at about 9.8 meters per second squared. This station feels like it's running maybe 60% of that." Dr. Kelthara's mathematical mind quickly converted the units, and his blood chilled. The human was describing gravitational forces that would be considered a torture device by most civilized species. His own homeworld of Zelanti Prime operated at a comfortable 3.2 meters per second squared, and that was considered on the higher end of habitable worlds. "That seems robust," Dr. Kelthara managed. "Earth's pretty standard as planets go," Marcus said with another shrug. "Little on the small side, actually. Some of the colony worlds have stronger gravity fields. My cousin works on Kepler 438b, and that place will really work your muscles." The examination continued, each test revealing more impossible data. The human's reaction time was faster than most predatory species. His immune system showed antibody complexity that suggested exposure to pathogens that should have been lethal. When Dr. Kelthara tested Marcus's reflexes, the human's hand moved so quickly it briefly became a blur on the medical scanner. "Sorry," Marcus said, noticing the doctor's shocked expression. "Didn't mean to startle you. Occupational hazard." "I work in asteroid mining, so quick reflexes keep you alive when equipment fails." Equipment fails. The casual way the human discussed life-threatening situations sent a chill through Dr. Kelthara's exoskeleton. He had worked with miners from dozens of species, and they all spoke of equipment failure as a rare catastrophe requiring immediate evacuation and extensive medical treatment. This human talked about it like discussing the weather. As the examination progressed, Dr. Kelthara found himself growing increasingly disturbed by the contradictions in his patient. Marcus was polite, intelligent, and displayed a gentle demeanor that suggested a highly civilized being, yet every biological reading screamed of a creature evolved for violence and survival in conditions that would eliminate most life forms. When Dr. Kelthara tested the human's visual acuity, he discovered that Marcus could track objects moving at velocities that most beings couldn't even register as motion. His hearing extended into frequency ranges typically associated with predatory species. Most unsettling of all, when the doctor accidentally dropped a medical instrument, the human's hand shot out to catch it with reflexes that suggested he had been tracking the device's trajectory before it even began to fall. "Impressive coordination," Dr. Kelthara commented, his voice slightly strained. "Baseball," Marcus explained cheerfully. "Played it through school. Teaches you to track fast-moving objects. Great sport. You should look it up sometime." Dr. Kelthara made a mental note to research this baseball activity, though something told him he might not appreciate what he discovered. The final series of tests proved the most revealing. When Dr. Kelthara administered the standard stress response evaluation, Marcus's body showed remarkable stability under conditions that would send most beings into physiological shock. The human's ability to process oxygen remained steady even when the atmospheric mixture was adjusted to simulate various emergency conditions. "How do you feel?" Dr. Kelthara asked as the environmental simulator cycled through increasingly hostile conditions. "Fine, thanks. This is actually more comfortable than the summer months back in Texas," Marcus replied, seemingly unaware that he was breathing an atmosphere that would be toxic to most carbon-based life forms. As the examination concluded, Dr. Kelthara found himself staring at a medical file that read like a collection of impossibilities. According to his instruments, he had just examined a being that could survive in environments that would kill most spacefaring species, possessed reflexes and strength that bordered on the supernatural, and did so while maintaining the demeanor of a perfectly civilized, friendly individual. "Well, Doc, how am I looking?" Marcus asked as he stepped down from the examination platform. "Perfectly healthy," Dr. Kelthara replied automatically, though his mind was anything but calm. "You should receive your certification within the standard cycle." As Marcus left the medical bay with a cheerful wave, Dr. Kelthara immediately accessed his secure terminal. He needed answers, and he needed them now. The human medical files were clearly incomplete, possibly deliberately so. There had to be more comprehensive data somewhere in the Galactic database. His first attempts yielded the same frustratingly sparse information he had found earlier. Basic biological classification, homeworld designation, and little else. But Dr. Kelthara had not earned his position as senior physician through accepting incomplete data. He began to dig deeper, using his medical credentials to access restricted research databases. What he found were fragments, references to something called the Darwin Protocol, mention of Death World classification pending. Most intriguingly, repeated references to medical files that were sealed under restricted Death World Protocol classifications. Dr. Kelthara's curiosity had evolved into genuine concern. If humans were potentially dangerous, the medical community had a right to know. If they posed a threat to other species, proper protocols needed to be in place. And if they were hiding something significant about their physiology, it could have serious implications for medical treatment of their kind. He spent the next several hours crafting a formal request for access to the complete human medical files. His credentials as a senior physician at one of the galaxy's premier medical facilities should be sufficient to access any biological data necessary for proper treatment. He cited medical necessity, patient safety concerns, and the standard protocols for treating unknown species. The request was filed through proper channels, marked with appropriate urgency codes, and transmitted to the Galactic Medical Authority's central database. Dr. Kelthera expected a routine approval within a standard day cycle, followed by access to comprehensive files that would explain the contradictions he had observed. What he received instead was a message that would haunt his dreams for cycles to come. The response arrived exactly 8 hours after his request's submission. Instead of the expected file transfer, Dr. Kelthera found a priority communication waiting in his secure inbox. The sender was listed as Galactic Medical Authority, Xenobiology Division, Special Classifications Department. The message was brief, formal, and utterly terrifying in its implications. Dr. Kelthera, your request for access to Terran physiological data has been received and reviewed. Access to complete files requires Special Classification Clearance Level Omega. Current request denied pending review of necessity and clearance verification. Note, partial access may be granted under supervised conditions. Recommended course of action: treat Terran subjects using standard humanoid protocols unless life-threatening emergency requires intervention. For emergency protocols, contact Special Classifications Department immediately. Do not attempt unauthorized access to restricted files. This communication is classified under Galactic Medical Authority Regulation 445.7 Alpha. Dr. Kelthera read the message 3 times, each pass increasing his sense of dread. Special Classification Clearance Level Omega was reserved for the most dangerous and sensitive information in the galaxy. He had only heard of it being applied to research involving extinct superweapons and studies of cosmic phenomena that could threaten entire star systems. Why would medical files on a seemingly peaceful species require such extreme security measures? His scientific mind refused to accept the denial. Somewhere in the galactic database were answers that could revolutionize medicine and xenobiology. The human he had examined represented a biological puzzle that demanded investigation. The strength, reflexes, and adaptability he had witnessed suggested evolutionary pressures beyond anything in the current scientific literature. Dr. Kelthera made a decision that would change everything. He would get those files. Dr. Kelthera spent 3 sleepless cycles researching everything he could about human medical classifications. His investigation led him through increasingly obscure databases, ancient xenobiology archives, and forgotten research stations scattered across the outer rim. What he found painted a picture that defied everything he thought he knew about galactic civilization. The first breakthrough came from an old research station orbiting a dead world in the Proxima sector. Dr. Kelthera discovered archived communications from the original First Contact protocols, established when humans first joined the galactic community. The files were incomplete, heavily redacted, and buried under layers of bureaucratic classification, but they revealed something extraordinary. Humans had not been invited to join galactic civilization. They had applied. The implications sent shockwaves through Dr. Kelthera's understanding of galactic history. Every species he knew of had been discovered by the established galactic community, carefully evaluated for sentience and technological capability, then gradually integrated through extensive diplomatic and scientific exchange. The process typically took decades or centuries, ensuring that new species were properly prepared for the vast complexities of interstellar civilization. But humans had somehow developed faster-than-light travel independently, crossed interstellar space on their own, and announced their presence to a galaxy that had no idea they existed. The archived communications were fragmentary, but Dr. Kelthera could piece together enough to understand the shockwaves that had rippled through the galactic government. The first human ambassadors had arrived at Alpha Centauri Station in a ship that barely qualified as space-worthy by galactic standards. They had traveled for months through the void in a vessel that most species would have considered a death trap, and they had done it voluntarily. Dr. Kelthera found references to emergency sessions of the Galactic Medical Council, hastily convened xenobiology committees, and frantic attempts to understand what the humans represented. The fragments painted a picture of a galactic government struggling to categorize beings that didn't fit any known templates for intelligent life. The second breakthrough came from his colleague, Dr. Shimmer of Distant Stars, a crystalline researcher specializing in comparative biology. When Dr. Kelthara mentioned his investigation into human physiology, Shimmer's faceted form literally dimmed with what her species expressed as deep concern. "You're researching the Earth spawn?" Shimmer asked, her crystalline voice taking on harmonic overtones that indicated severe distress. "Kelthara, my friend, there are some knowledge paths that lead only to madness." "What do you know about them?" Dr. Kelthara pressed, his scientific curiosity overriding the warning in his colleague's tone. Shimmer of Distant Stars oriented her primary crystal toward him, a gesture equivalent to intense eye contact among her species. "My research focuses on evolutionary adaptation under extreme conditions. The humans, they represent something unprecedented in the galaxy's biological record." She paused, her internal light flickering as she accessed deep memory archives stored within her crystalline matrix. "Have you ever wondered why most intelligent species evolved from prey animals, Kelthara? The Zelanti from herd creatures, my people from colonial organisms that achieved safety through cooperation, the Nexari from tree-dwelling gatherers who found security in height?" Dr. Kelthera's secondary arms twitched with impatience, but he recognized the importance of context in crystalline communication patterns. Prey species develop intelligence as a survival mechanism against predators. It's basic evolutionary theory. "Exactly," Shimmer agreed, her form brightening with the satisfaction of shared understanding. "Intelligence emerges as a response to existential threat. But what happens when intelligence evolves not in prey, but in the predators themselves?" The question hit Dr. Kelthara like a physical blow. His mind raced through the implications, connecting dots he had been unconsciously avoiding. The reflexes, the physical capabilities, the casual acceptance of life-threatening conditions. It all pointed to an evolutionary path that most species preferred not to acknowledge. "You're suggesting humans evolved as predators?" he asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "I'm stating it as biological fact," Shimmer replied, her voice carrying the absolute certainty of peer-reviewed research. "But that's not the truly terrifying part, my friend. Predators evolve intelligence for hunting efficiency. Humans developed intelligence so far beyond hunting requirements that they became capable of interstellar travel. The question that keeps me from entering proper rest cycles is simple. What were they hunting that required such extreme cognitive evolution?" Dr. Kelthera's exoskeleton felt suddenly too tight. The human he had examined, Marcus Chen, had displayed the casual friendliness of a being completely comfortable in his own skin. There had been no hint of predatory menace, no suggestion of violence or aggression. Yet the biological evidence was undeniable. Shimmer continued, her crystalline form pulsing with the rhythm of deep thought. "The restricted files exist for good reason, Kelthera. I've caught glimpses through my evolutionary research, fragments of data that suggest human homeworld conditions that would challenge our fundamental understanding of habitability." "What kind of conditions?" Dr. Kelthera asked, though he was beginning to fear the answer. "Atmospheric composition that would be toxic to most carbon-based life. Temperature variations that would shatter most organic compounds. Seismic activity that would preclude the development of stable civilization. Gravitational forces that would crush most skeletal structures. And that's before considering the biological competition. Shimmer paused, her light dimming to barely perceptible levels. Kelthara, from what I can determine through indirect research, humans evolved on a world where almost everything was actively trying to kill them. The atmospheric composition, the weather patterns, the geological activity, and particularly the other life forms. They didn't just survive these conditions, they thrived enough to develop spacefaring civilization. Dr. Kelthara felt a chill that penetrated his exoskeleton. A death world. The textbook definition, Shimmer confirmed. But the truly remarkable part isn't their adaptation to hostile conditions. It's their psychological response to it. Most species that survive extreme evolutionary pressures develop collective trauma responses, heightened fear reflexes, and profound risk aversion behaviors. Humans developed the opposite. What do you mean? They seek out dangerous situations for entertainment. They've developed recreational activities that would qualify as torture in most civilized legal codes, and they do it voluntarily, often paying for the privilege. I've found references to activities called extreme sports that involve deliberately placing oneself in life-threatening situations purely for the physiological excitement it produces. Dr. Kelthara's mind flashed back to Marcus mentioning baseball as a casual recreational activity. The implications were becoming increasingly disturbing. His investigation took on new urgency. Dr. Kelthara began accessing any database that might contain information about human activities, cultural practices, or historical records. What he discovered challenged his fundamental understanding of civilization itself. Humans had a concept called war that appeared central to their historical development. From what Dr. Kelthara could determine through fragmented cultural databases, this war involved large-scale organized violence between different human groups. Not hunting, not territorial disputes over resources, but systematic application of lethal force purely for ideological or political purposes. Most disturbing was the scale and sophistication of these conflicts. Humans had apparently developed technologies specifically designed to eliminate other humans with maximum efficiency. They had created weapons capable of destroying entire cities, vehicles designed purely for delivering violence, and organizational systems that could coordinate lethal activities across planetary distances. And then they had voluntarily abolished most of these technologies when they achieved spaceflight. Dr. Kelthara found references to something called nuclear disarmament treaties and international war crimes tribunals. Somehow, a species that had evolved sophisticated methods for killing its own kind had managed to develop sufficient moral philosophy to recognize these behaviors as problematic and actively work to eliminate them. The psychological complexity required for such a transformation was staggering. It suggested a species capable of profound violence that had consciously chosen cooperation and peace through philosophical evolution rather than biological necessity. But the most disturbing discovery came when Dr. Kelthara researched human entertainment and cultural expressions. Their fictional media was filled with scenarios that other species would classify as existential horror. Humans created stories about surviving planetary disasters, fighting impossible odds, and overcoming threats that would cause most civilized beings to enter catatonic shock. More significantly, these stories were considered inspiring rather than terrifying. Dr. Kelthara found records of human entertainment called action movies that featured individual humans surviving conditions that would kill entire civilizations. The protagonists of these stories regularly endured physical trauma that would be fatal to most species, overcome impossible odds through sheer determination, and emerged victorious against threats that should have been beyond any individual's capability to address, and humans consumed this entertainment for pleasure. The psychological profile that emerged was of a species that had evolved not just the physical capability to survive in extreme conditions, but the mental framework to thrive under circumstances that would break most civilized minds. They had developed cultural mythology that celebrated overcoming impossible challenges, biological systems that responded to danger with enhanced performance rather than paralysis, and social structures that encouraged individual initiative in the face of overwhelming odds. Dr. Kelthera realized he was researching a species of beings that had evolved to treat catastrophic circumstances as normal operational parameters. His formal request for access to complete human medical files took on new significance. This wasn't merely scientific curiosity anymore. It was a matter of galactic security. If humans represented a fundamental threat to civilized space, the medical community needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with. Dr. Kelthara composed a new request, this time emphasizing the security implications of incomplete data. He cited potential medical emergencies, the need for proper treatment protocols, and the responsibility of medical professionals to understand the beings they were treating. His credentials, his research, and his growing file of evidence should be sufficient to justify access to restricted information. The response came faster than his previous request. Dr. Kelthara, your repeated requests for access to Terran biological data have been noted and reviewed by the appropriate authorities. You are hereby scheduled for a mandatory briefing regarding special classification protocols and Death World species interaction guidelines. Report to Station Commander's office, Secure Conference Room 7, at 0800 Standard Galactic Time tomorrow. This briefing is classified under Authority Regulation 445.7 Alpha. Failure to attend will result in suspension of medical privileges pending security review. Dr. Kelthara stared at the message with a mixture of triumph and terror. He was finally going to get answers about humanity. But the tone of the message suggested that those answers might be more than he was prepared to handle. As he prepared for sleep, Dr. Kelthara's mind raced through everything he had discovered. Humans were predatory beings evolved on a death world, possessing physical capabilities that bordered on supernatural and psychological frameworks that treated deadly circumstances as entertainment. They had developed weapons capable of destroying planets, then chosen to abandon them in favor of peaceful exploration. They were perhaps the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, and they had voluntarily integrated into civilized society with apparently genuine intentions of cooperation and friendship. Tomorrow, Dr. Kelthara would finally learn what the galactic authorities knew about humanity. He was no longer certain he wanted that knowledge. Dr. Kelthara arrived at Secure Conference Room 7, precisely at 0800 Standard Galactic Time, his forearms carrying the research files he had compiled over the previous cycles. The room was smaller than he had expected. With reinforced walls that suggested both privacy and physical security were priorities. Two beings waited for him inside. The first was Station Commander Vexhai, an imposing Nexari whose tree-like stature filled nearly half the room. Her bark-like skin showed the deep grooves that indicated advanced age and wisdom among her species. The second being was unfamiliar, a sleek metallic form that Dr. Kelthara recognized as one of the rare synthetic collective representatives. Their kind seldom interacted with biological species directly. Dr. Kelthara, Commander Vexhai said, her voice carrying the deep resonance typical of her species. Please, take a seat. I am Commander Vexhai, and this is Analysis Unit Prime Zeta 9, representing the Galactic Intelligence Coordination Network. Dr. Kelthara settled into the provided chair, his secondary arms automatically organizing his research materials. I appreciate your time. I believe there are serious gaps in our understanding of human physiology that could impact medical treatment protocols. Analysis Unit Zeta 9's optical sensors focused on him with mechanical precision. When it spoke, its voice carried the perfectly modulated tones of synthetic consciousness. Dr. Kelthara, your research requests have triggered several security protocols designed to monitor interest in classified xenobiological data. Before we proceed, We need to establish your clearance level and motivations for accessing restricted information. My motivations are purely medical, Dr. Kelthera replied, though something in the synthetic being's tone suggested this briefing would be far more complex than he had anticipated. I examined a human patient 3 cycles ago, and the biological readings were unprecedented. I need complete physiological data to provide appropriate medical care. Commander Vexhi's bark groaned softly as she shifted position, a sound that indicated careful consideration among Nexari. Dr. Kelthara, what we're about to share with you is classified under the highest levels of galactic security. The information exists not to hide human capabilities from the medical community, but to protect galactic civilization from panic and potentially catastrophic social destabilization. Analysis Unit Zeta-9 activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room with 3-dimensional models and data streams. Dr. Kelthera, your research has already uncovered many concerning elements about human evolution. What you haven't discovered is why the Galactic Council considers this information so sensitive. The holographic display shifted to show a representation of human space. Dozens of star systems connected by trade routes, military positions, and communication networks. Currently, humans represent approximately 12% of galactic civilization's total population. They control 23% of interstellar shipping, provide 31% of deep space exploration services, and constitute 47% of emergency rescue operations personnel. Dr. Kelthara studied the display, his scientific mind automatically processing the statistical implications. Those percentages seem disproportionate to their population representation. Precisely the point, Commander Vexhi agreed. Humans have integrated into galactic civilization so effectively that they now occupy critical positions throughout our infrastructure. They volunteer for the most dangerous assignments, accept postings that other species consider too hazardous, and consistently demonstrate capabilities that exceed established parameters for biological beings. Analysis Unit Zeta-9 manipulated the holographic display to show detailed files on human activities across the galaxy. Emergency response teams are 73% human. Deep space mining operations prefer human workers by a ratio of 8.1 over other species. Exploration missions into unknown territory are 89% human crewed because other species' survival rates in uncharted space are statistically insignificant. The implications hit Dr. Kelthera like a physical blow. You're saying that galactic civilization has become dependent on human capabilities? Not dependent, Commander Vexhi corrected. But their withdrawal from galactic society would create infrastructure collapse in multiple critical sectors. The economic and social disruption would be catastrophic. Dr. Kelthara's mind raced through the political implications. If the general population understood that humans were essentially death-world predators, whose physical and psychological capabilities far exceeded anything previously encountered, the social response could range from panic to demands for human segregation or expulsion from galactic civilization. But surely the other species suspect something, Dr. Kelthera said. The physical capabilities I observed couldn't be completely hidden. Analysis Unit Zeta-9's optical sensors dimmed slightly, a behavior Dr. Kelthera had never seen from a synthetic collective unit before. Dr. Kelthera, this brings us to the most remarkable aspect of human integration into galactic society. They are actively concealing their capabilities. The holographic display shifted to show video recordings of humans interacting with other species. Dr. Kelthera watched as human workers deliberately slowed their movements when working alongside non-human colleagues, carefully modulated their strength to avoid damaging equipment designed for less robust beings, and consistently demonstrated patience and gentleness when dealing with species that they could have easily overwhelmed. They're pretending to be weaker than they are? Dr. Kelthera asked, though the evidence was clear in the recordings. Not pretending, Commander Vexhi clarified. Adapting. Humans have developed sophisticated social protocols designed to minimize the physical and psychological differences between themselves and other galactic species. They've essentially created an entire behavioral modification system to function in civilized space without causing alarm. Dr. Kelthara watched recordings of human emergency response teams working disaster scenarios. The humans moved with efficiency and capability that seemed almost supernatural, but they did so in ways that made their actions appear heroic rather than terrifying. They framed their extraordinary survival capabilities as luck, training, or determination, rather than biological superiority. The remarkable part, Analysis Unit Zeta 9 continued, is that this behavior modification appears to be genuine rather than strategic deception. Psychological evaluations suggest that humans truly desire peaceful integration and cooperative civilization. Their concealment of capabilities stems from what they term social consideration rather than predatory camouflage. The holographic display showed Dr. Kelthara something that redefined his understanding of human psychology entirely. Medical records from emergency situations where humans had been forced to reveal their true capabilities showed consistent patterns of distress at having frightened other species, guilt over their advantages, and active efforts to provide comfort and reassurance to those who had witnessed their actions. "They feel bad about being dangerous?" Dr. Kelthara asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That appears to be accurate," Commander Vexhai confirmed. Human psychological profiles indicate that they have evolved not just the capability for extreme survival, but also profound empathy for beings less capable than themselves. They genuinely appear to be concerned about the social welfare of other species. Dr. Kelthara studied the data streams flowing around the holographic display. Emergency response records showed humans consistently risking their own lives to save beings from species that would never survive similar threats. Economic records showed human workers frequently accepting lower compensation than their capabilities warranted, apparently to avoid creating wage disparities that would disadvantage other species. Social integration reports documented thousands of instances where humans had deliberately failed to compete for positions or opportunities that their abilities would have guaranteed them. They're deliberately limiting themselves, Dr. Kelthara realized. Analysis Unit Zeta 9 activated a new set of displays showing classified psychological evaluations. Human cultural development appears to have produced a species-wide commitment to what they term fair play and helping others. Their integration into galactic society follows patterns consistent with genuinely altruistic motivation rather than strategic positioning. Commander Vexhai leaned forward, her ancient bark creaking with the motion. "Dr. Kelthara, this is why human medical files are restricted. Not because humans pose a threat to galactic civilization, but because galactic civilization might pose a threat to humans if their true capabilities were widely known." The statement hung in the air like a revelation that recontextualized everything Dr. Kelthara thought he understood about galactic politics. "You're worried about other species' reactions to human capabilities?" Historical analysis suggests several possible outcomes, Analysis Unit Zeta 9 replied, its synthetic voice carrying what almost seemed like concern. "Panic-driven isolation demands, attempts to weaponize human capabilities for military advantage, or economic exploitation based on their survival abilities. All scenarios result in the breakdown of the peaceful integration that humans have worked to achieve." Dr. Kelthara examined the classified files streaming across the holographic display. Detailed analyses of human homeworld conditions painted a picture of evolutionary pressures so extreme that their survival as a species represented a statistical impossibility. Earth's atmospheric composition, geological activity, climate variations, and biological competition should have eliminated any possibility of complex life, let alone the development of civilization. Yet humans had not only survived, but had developed philosophy, art, science, and moral frameworks sophisticated enough to guide their integration into galactic society with genuine consideration for other species' welfare. The psychological profiles are remarkable, Dr. Kelthera said, studying the data. They evolved under conditions that should have produced pure survival instincts, but they've developed cooperative social structures and genuine altruism. More than that, Commander Vexhai added, human moral philosophy emphasizes responsibility for protecting those less capable than themselves. They've essentially evolved a species-wide protective instinct for what they perceive as weaker beings. From their perspective, most galactic civilization falls into that category. Dr. Kelthera felt a strange emotion building in his chest, something between awe and protective concern for a species that was simultaneously the most dangerous and most gentle beings he had ever encountered. They see us as their responsibility. Not in a condescending way, Analysis Unit Zeta 9 clarified. Human cultural expressions consistently emphasize mutual respect and cooperative partnership. But their biological and psychological frameworks make them natural protectors of other species, often at significant personal cost. The holographic display showed Dr. Kelthera something that brought tears to his compound eyes. Records of human workers who had died protecting colleagues from other species during industrial accidents, humans who had volunteered for suicide missions to save space stations populated primarily by non-humans, and humans who had spent their entire careers working in conditions that slowly killed them to maintain services that other species depended upon. They're dying for us, Dr. Kelthera whispered. And they consider it an honor to do so, Commander Vexhai confirmed. This is why human medical files are restricted, Dr. Kelthera, not to protect galactic civilization from humans, but to protect humans from a civilization that might not be worthy of their sacrifice. Dr. Kelthera sat in stunned silence, processing the ethical implications of what he had learned. The friendly, cheerful human he had examined was a being whose species had evolved to survive conditions that would eliminate most life in the galaxy, yet who had chosen to dedicate his existence to serving the needs of beings far more fragile than himself. What happens now? Dr. Kelthera asked. What do I do with this information? Analysis Unit Zeta 9 deactivated the holographic display, returning the room to normal lighting. You continue treating human patients using standard protocols. You maintain appropriate medical confidentiality. And you remember that the beings you're treating represent perhaps the most remarkable example of evolutionary adaptation and moral development in the galaxy's recorded history. Commander Vexhai stood, her massive form casting shadows across the conference room. Dr. Kelthera, humans trust galactic civilization enough to limit themselves, to hide their capabilities, and to serve our needs at the cost of their own potential. The least we can do is ensure that trust is worthy of them. As Dr. Kelthera left the secure conference room, his mind reeled with the implications of what he had learned. The human medical files would remain restricted not because humans were dangerous, but because they were too valuable to risk losing through fear or misunderstanding. He thought of Marcus Chen, cheerfully submitting to medical examination while concealing capabilities that would have redefined galactic understanding of biological possibility. The human had been genuinely friendly, sincerely concerned about following proper procedures, and completely committed to maintaining the comfortable illusion that allowed other species to feel secure around him. Dr. Kelthera realized that he had encountered not just a remarkable patient, but a representative of perhaps the most noble species in galactic civilization. Humans had evolved as predators on a death world, developed capabilities that exceeded anything in the known galaxy, and chosen to use those gifts in service of beings who could never reciprocate their sacrifice. The restricted files would remain restricted. But Dr. Kelthera would never again look at human patients the same way. Behind their cheerful demeanor and casual friendliness lay beings whose very existence represented a triumph of moral evolution over biological destiny. In a galaxy filled with wonders, humans were perhaps the most wonderful of all, not despite their dangerous capabilities, but because of what they had chosen to do with them. Dr. Kelthera returned to his medical bay with a new understanding of his role. He wasn't just treating patients. He was serving beings who had voluntarily limited themselves out of consideration for his comfort and safety. The least he could do was ensure they received the finest medical care in the galaxy. After all, they deserved nothing less than the very best civilization could offer.